I'm Jennifer O'Loughlin, and this is Living the Classical Life.
Jennifer, it's such a pleasure to have you here on the show. You've sung and performed all around the world in numerous operas and roles in the world's great venues with important conductors. You've made several recordings, and now we're thrilled to have you on here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
How were you first drawn to music?
I've been singing and playing music most of my life. When I was in first grade, I was chosen to sing Silent Night by the music teacher. They heard that I had a voice, and that was my first public appearance. And then I continued singing just for fun, and I played the clarinet as well in school and the piano. And then I was asked to audition for the Children's Festival Chorus in Pittsburgh, headed by Christine Jordanoff. And so that's where I really started my musical training, where I got a real good background in music, choral singing, theory, and continued to do that for several years before I took private lessons.
So did you know immediately that music was a passion for you, or that it would eventually become your life?
I always say I knew that when I was 14, when I sang my first role. I had a very strong sense that it was necessary for me to be on stage. It was almost like I dreamt it up and manifested that opportunity.
So you were almost born for the stage? Was that something that felt comfortable for you from the beginning?
Yes, I was always making little shows at school, little puppet shows and writing shows and creating things and making up songs, and so that was very much a part of my young life.
What was your early exposure to opera? Did you have a chance to attend performances, perhaps there in Pittsburgh?
I think yes, I didn't actually see an opera before I was in an opera.
That's incredible.
I'd never,
it's a total
never
immersion.
thought of that. Yes.
Yes. And what was that experience like, being a child in La Boheme?
It was overwhelming. The sound of the orchestra alone blew me away. It was so visceral, and I was one of the lucky children that was allowed to stay on stage during the scene with Musetta. Most of the other kids had to go off, and there were 3 or 4 kids who stayed on to do some little scene on the side. And well, I got to watch Musetta, and I said, I want to sing Musetta.
That's amazing. So I'm always curious about singers in particular. How do you go about preparing a role? Do you start by immersing yourself in the music? Do you start looking at staging? Or does that happen together?
Well, you get the score, and you hold it in your hands, and you open it, and you look at the text first. You look at the libretto, and you look often at a CD text booklet for the overview. But then, of course, if you really want to know what the language is, you get your dictionary out and you figure out exactly what each word means and exactly how to say that word in the language that you're working in authentically. And then you look at how the composer has set those words, and you look at the score and the chord structure and the way he chooses to write the line, how he chooses to set that text, and you begin then to sing the line very easily and very slowly.
This sounds like a very involved and time-consuming process. Do you usually have the luxury of taking that time to let things digest?
I do. I almost insist upon it. I don't like to go to a coach and say, teach this to me. I always want to do that groundwork on my own, and then go to a coach and explore the possibilities of how to do that, how to continue doing that myself.
Does it also take time to identify with all the characters that you're portraying? Is it sometimes more difficult than others?
To identify with the characters.
Sometimes the characters are more complicated than others in terms of their motives or their disposition. Does it take time to get into that role?
Yes. Some roles are closer to our own personalities than others. I'm trying to think of a good example.
What do you have to do, for example, if the character is totally opposed to your own nature?
You really have to use your imagination, and don't try to make it like yourself. Just think, what makes this character tick? What makes this person tick? And go into that with your mind.
Has it ever happened that you had to portray a character that you didn't even necessarily like? Or in the moment of performance, you always have to just like what you're doing?
It's very important to love what you're doing in the moment that you're doing it. Yes. I mean, I would say the Queen of the Night would be a role that I don't like that personality, but it doesn't matter whether you like that personality or not. It's your goal to become that personality, and then to seem as if you're expressing what that character is expressing for the very first time.
Let's talk about performance. How aware are you of your audience?
I would say I'm very aware of the audience. I'm very aware of their energy. I'm very aware of giving my energy to them and receiving their energy. I feel that it's important to draw an audience into me, into my world. Mm-hmm. That it's very important to have so much fantasy and so much imagination going on that you almost forget that you're singing. And I would say that there is a space between the audience and the singer where the energy spins around, and it's a sharing process.
And does that matter for you, whether the hall is a large one or a small one? Does that make a difference for you in terms of that spinning around energy?
I would say the bigger the hall, the bigger you have to imagine that energy being. Even though in reality it doesn't matter what the space is.
Your voice has this incredible capacity for coloratura passages. I'm always wondering, do coloratura singers ever wonder whether those high notes will be there when they need them?
I think we wonder that all the time. I think the most important thing is to keep your mind from going there, and to be able to trust.
And how do you necessarily allow yourself to trust when there's the pressure of the performance? Let's say you're backstage. What's going through your mind? Is your focus on the music? Is your focus on just trying to breathe?
Well, continuing to breathe is very important.
I always forget to breathe when
Really?
I'm performing. Yes, if I get nervous, the first thing I forget to do is breathe. So I'm always trying to be aware of backstage setting up a rhythm. And
Yes.
I know that's particularly sensitive for singers, obviously.
Yes. Well, in the work that I do as an artist to prepare, I do yoga, I do meditation, and a big part of that is breathing. My voice teacher teases me and says, if I get upset, keep breathing. It's okay, keep breathing. It's very important to remember to do that. But backstage, I would say I'm thinking about the character and the music, but I'm also thinking about going out there and being in that moment, enjoying that moment, always giving my best to the audience. And I have a little prayer, it's quite personal, that I say that I feel keeps me focused and on point. It's God sing through me, with me, and be with me.
That is beautiful.
That I feel that the sound that I make is coming through God.
Thank you for sharing that. How does a young performer today deal with negative criticism? There's so much online in the way of public forums where audience members can give their opinions, and in a lot of cases there can be direct attacks. How do you deal with that?
I often don't read reviews, or I don't read them until well after a production is finished. And I always keep in mind that if you get 10 reviews, probably 2 of them will not be good. And I don't read them because I really enjoy having my own opinion and my own feelings about things, that I don't want to interfere with the way I feel and think about the music as I'm creating it and performing it in the moment. For me, the only purpose of reviews is to find a good one and put it on my website. But of course, then I suppose one has to deal with the reputation and how that can affect getting hired again or being well liked by a house.
Is that something that enters into your mind in the moment of a performance? Are they going to like me? Will I be invited back?
Well, you're sitting there, you know they're all sitting out there for your premiere, the press and the VIPs, and I have to force myself not to think about that, to say that is not why I'm out here.
So in that case, that probably is what got you through in terms of when you were in the early days of making your way into a life of music. Were you
Yes.
ever intimidated by the world of managers, competitions, reviewers, reputation?
Very much so. We're vulnerable. We need the approval of others in order to continue. We need the applause. And competitions, I did several of them, was successful with a few, often met with disappointment, but knew that I just had to continue to persevere.
And how do you deal with that disappointment? What advice do you have for other young performers who are going through the same thing and probably experiencing more than their fair share of disappointment?
Yes. How does one deal with disappointment? You acknowledge it and you accept it and you say, I'm going to continue on regardless, because I believe in what I'm doing, I believe in what I have to say as an artist. And you believe that there's somebody who's going to want to listen to you, ultimately.
And do you in fact have a favorite operatic role?
No. I really try to love everything I'm doing while I'm doing it. I love doing the Amira. I love that character. I love her personality. I love her heart, her simplicity, the psychological I would go so far as to say torment that she goes through as a sleepwalker. Amina is, just to clarify that a little bit, Amina is the sleepwalker. It's called La Sonnambula, meaning the sleepwalker, by Bellini. And she has a problem that people didn't understand at the time, like we understand it today. Mm-hmm. And part of my preparation in doing that role was looking up sleepwalking and sleep cycles and all of the scientific research that actually showed that what Bellini wrote in this story was accurate. That she goes to sleep, and in the first sleep cycle, when people usually sleepwalk, she stands up and thinks she's going to her fiancé's room, and she ends up sleepwalking into another man's room, which is what creates the drama in the story. But I could relate to that psychological torment. I could relate to the purity of her character. I could also relate to Constanza in another one of my favorite roles, in The Abduction from the Seraglio, to her strength, to her willfulness. There we go, willfulness.
Jennifer, you work with a pretty remarkable vocal coach. Can you tell us a little bit about him and the role that a vocal coach plays in the life of a singer?
Yes. To me, he's more than a vocal coach. He's also my voice teacher, in that we do work on technique. Mark Markham is his name. He has been the official accompanist for all of Jesse Norman's concerts the last 20 years. And I first met him when I was at Peabody Conservatory of Music. I've also been blessed to have other wonderful teachers. My teacher at Peabody was Ruth Drucker, wonderful teacher. And when I went to Manhattan School of Music, I had Joan Patenaude Yarnell. So all through my studies, I've been very blessed. But Mark is very special in my life right now because I worked with him at Peabody, and then he left to go on tour with Jesse Norman. And when I went to Europe, he also moved to Europe and sent me an email in 2007 saying, "Hello, how are you? Want to catch up with you?" And we started to coach. I started to go to his house in Provence. And he is the one who really suggested that I start to look at roles like Zerbinetta and Gilda in this higher flying repertoire than I was being assigned in Vienna as an ensemble member. I was singing more Susannas and Paminas, which is wonderful. I love that repertoire, but I needed something that was really going to showcase me. And the work that I did with him on Zerbinetta and Constanza and Gilda and now Amina has really changed my life.
I wish you so much luck, and thank you so much for being on Living the Classical Life. It's been such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For me as well.
Awesome. It was fun.
Yes.